The midnight thief in the garden, the wind moved gently through the tall grass, whispering secrets only the night could hear, inside a small house near the forest's edge. A man named Ellis woke up to a soft, rustling sound. It was almost 3 in the morning. He lived alone on this farming colony, far from the central cities. His neighbors were miles away, and no one usually came this far unless they were lost or hiding. He sat up in bed, listening. The sound came again, something soft, brushing against leaves. Not an animal, he thought. Animals didn't move like that. Quietly, he pulled on his boots, grabbed the old flashlight from the hook, and stepped outside. The night was cold, and the sky was filled with unfamiliar stars. Ellis had lived here for 3 years, planting vegetables and keeping to himself. He wasn't the kind of man to chase trouble, but he wasn't going to let someone steal from him either. As he walked past his storage shed and toward the garden, he spotted movement. A shadow crouched near the rows of growing tubers. His light clicked on, and the beam cut through the dark. That's when he saw her. She was tall, thin, and cloaked in something made from scraps of cloth and metal. Her skin was a pale purple, her eyes wide and glowing softly in the beam. A sack of vegetables spilled at her feet, some rolling across the soil. She froze. Her hands raised slightly, not in attack, but in fear. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Don't shoot my children. They need food." Ellis stared at her, his mind trying to catch up. She wasn't a beast or a bandit. She was a mother. He lowered the flashlight slowly. "You're stealing from my garden," he said, keeping his voice calm. "Yes," she replied, ashamed, "but only because I had no choice." She bent to pick up the vegetables, her hands trembling. Ellis noticed her fingers were cut and bruised. Her cloak soaked near the bottom with mud. Something in him shifted. He wasn't angry anymore, just confused and curious. "Where are your children?" he asked. The alien mother hesitated, then looked toward the forest. "Hiding," she said. "They are weak, cold, and hungry." Ellis looked down at the vegetables, then back at her. She was ready to run. He could see it in her posture, but she wasn't running, not yet. Maybe because she hoped for mercy. Maybe because she was too tired. He sighed, then nodded toward the sack. "Take it," he said. "But don't come back." Her eyes widened, full of shock and something deeper, like sorrow mixed with pride. "Thank you," she whispered, grabbing the sack quickly, without another word. She turned and vanished into the trees. As silent as she came, Ellis stood there for a long moment, listening to the night. His garden was missing a few tubers and leaves, but nothing serious. Still, something about the way she had begged haunted him. He went back inside, sat on his wooden chair, and stared at the fire. Was she telling the truth? Were her children truly starving out there in the cold? He didn't know, but her eyes, they hadn't lied. That night, Ellis didn't sleep again. The wind kept whispering, and in the silence of his small cabin, he felt something stir inside him. Not fear, not anger, but a strange sense of responsibility. Tomorrow, he told himself, tomorrow he would check the woods, not to punish, but maybe to understand. Tracks in the mud. Morning came slow, with heavy clouds hanging over the sky. Ellis stood at the edge of his garden, staring at the place where the alien woman had knelt. The ground was soft from last night's mist, and the prints were still there, light, careful steps that led toward the tree line. He followed them, boots sinking slightly into the mud, heart beating harder than it should have. He didn't know what he would find. He only knew that something about her voice, so broken, so desperate, wouldn't let him forget. The tracks weaved through tall grass and low branches. Some were larger, hers. He guessed some were small, children, just like she said. Ellis crouched and touched one of the smaller footprints. It was no larger than his hand. He let out a slow breath. She hadn't lied. He walked deeper into the woods, following the trail. It led him to a rocky slope where the trees grew thinner. There, half hidden by bushes and broken branches, sat a small, crashed cargo pod. Its metal skin was scratched and scorched. One side completely caved in. A tattered sheet hung over the open door like a curtain, barely blocking the cold. He didn't step closer just yet. Instead, he watched from behind a thick tree trunk. Inside, he saw movement shapes huddled close together. The alien woman sat with her back to him, her cloak wrapped tightly around a small form in her lap. Two other children lay beside her, wrapped in cloth and covered with frost-bitten leaves. She was humming softly, as if the tune could keep the cold away. But her shoulders were shaking, and Ellis could hear the quiet coughs coming from the child in her arms. He took a step forward. The ground crunched underfoot. The humming stopped. She turned sharply, eyes wide, arms tightening around her child. "You followed me," she said, voice low and tired. Ellis raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. "I didn't come to hurt you," he said. "I came to see if what you said was true." The woman didn't speak, only looked at him. Her eyes guarded, Ellis pointed gently toward the children. "They're sick," he said, "especially the little one." A long silence passed before she finally answered. "Yes," she said. "He hasn't eaten in 2 days. The air here burns his lungs." Ellis stepped closer, stopping a few feet away from the pod. "I have food," he said, "and medicine. Maybe not the best kind, but it helps with fever." She didn't move, still watching him like a wild animal expecting a trap. Ellis slowly reached into his coat and pulled out a small pack of dried food. He placed it on a flat stone near the pod's entrance, then backed away. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I just don't like seeing children suffer." Still, she didn't speak, but her eyes dropped to the food. Her lips moved silently, forming a thank you she couldn't speak aloud. Ellis turned and walked away, heart heavy and hands cold, as he reached the edge of the forest. He looked back once more. The woman had crawled out of the pod and was kneeling near the stone, opening the food carefully and feeding the smallest child first. That night, Ellis left another bundle at the tree-line extra blankets, some soup, and a bottle of cough syrup. He didn't knock or wait, just placed it quietly and returned to his home. The next morning, he found the bundle gone, but in its place was a small, carved stone, a crude shape of a leaf, worn smooth. It wasn't much, but it was more than thanks. It was trust. Ellis kept the stone on his table near the fire. Each day after that, he brought more supplies, slowly, carefully not to scare them. He never entered the pod again, never asked her name. He just kept coming back, and she kept accepting. In the silence between them, something was growing. Not friendship, not yet, but something close to understanding. And still, he didn't tell anyone, because deep down, Elise knew. The others found out. They'd call her a trespasser, a thief, a danger. But he had seen her arms trembling as she fed her child, and he knew the truth. She wasn't dangerous. She was just a mother trying to keep her children alive. Rain and a risk taken. The sky turned dark before the sun had fully set. Clouds rolled in, thick and heavy, and the wind howled like a wounded animal through the forest. Ellis stood on his porch, watching the storm gather. His thoughts were not on his roof or tools, but on the broken cargo pod deep in the trees, and the fragile family inside it. He grabbed a raincoat and a small box of supplies, dried food, water, to clean blankets, and more medicine. He didn't plan to stay, just drop them near the tree line like before. But when he reached the spot, something was wrong. The wind had knocked over branches everywhere. A large tree had fallen, its trunk snapping apart like dry bone, and through the storm, he could see smoke. No, not smoke, steam. It was rising from the broken shell of the pod. "Damn," he whispered, his boots squishing through mud as he ran. The pod was barely standing now. One side crushed by the fallen tree, water poured in through the cracks, and the patchwork curtain hung in shreds inside. The alien woman was trying to shield her children with her own body. One of the kids was crying weak, wheezing sobs, and the smallest was unmoving. Ellis didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, tossing the supplies aside, and crouched at the door. "You have to come with me," he said loudly over the wind. She looked up, her eyes full of panic. "I can't move them fast enough," she cried. "He won't wake up." Ellis reached in, wrapping the smallest child in a blanket and gently lifting him. The child's skin was cold, lips pale, body far too light. "You carry the others," he ordered. "I'll take this one for a second." She froze. Then she nodded and wrapped her arms around the two older children. They stumbled out together into the storm. Rain fell like knives, cutting across their skin as they pushed through the forest. Ellis knew the path well, and he moved fast, glancing down every few steps at the still child in his arms. The boy wasn't breathing well. P was still breathing. That gave Ellis hope. When they reached the house, he threw open the door and brought them inside. The fire was low but warm, and he laid the child near it. Grabbing a towel to dry him off, the alien mother followed quickly, her two children clinging to her like frightened animals. She stood in the middle of the room, dripping and silent, unsure what to do. Ellis moved quickly, bringing more towels and handing her a blanket. "Wrap them," he said, "then sit by the fire." She obeyed without a word. Pulling her children close, as Ellis checked the smallest one, he rubbed the boy's arms, chest, and back, trying to bring warmth back to his tiny body. After a minute, the boy let out a weak cough, then another, stronger. The woman gasped and pressed a hand over her mouth, tears falling silently. "He's alive," Ellis said gently, "but he needs food and rest." The woman nodded, too emotional to speak. She looked around his home, taking in the simple furniture, the fire, the safety. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "I never wanted to bring danger to your home." Ellis shook his head. "You didn't bring danger," he said. "You brought children who needed help." He set out food, warm broth and bread, and watched as the two older kids ate like they hadn't seen food in days. The youngest stayed close to the fire, slowly sipping from a cup as his strength returned. Hours passed, and the storm raged outside, but inside, there was only the sound of soft breathing and the crackle of flames. Ellis sat in his chair, watching them sleep. The alien woman looked up at him, her eyes softer now. "You don't even know my name," she said quietly. "You can tell me when you're ready," Ellis replied. She gave a slow nod. "I am Vetra," she said. "My children are Ciel, Breck, and little Rilo." Ellis repeated the names under his breath. They were strange, but they would stay with him. "You saved us tonight," Vetra said, her voice heavy with gratitude and shame. "I couldn't let you die in that wreck," Ellis answered. "No decent man could." They didn't speak after that. The fire warmed the room, and the wind screamed against the walls. But in the quiet, something changed. Ellis didn't see a thief anymore. He saw a mother, brave and broken, doing everything she could for her children, and now they were under his roof. He didn't know what the next day would bring, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going to turn them away. Not now, not ever. Her story, her shame. The rain had stopped by morning, but the ground outside was soaked. Inside Ellis's cabin, the warmth of the fire still clung to the walls. Steam rose from drying clothes, and soft breathing filled the room. The children slept close together on a bed of blankets near the hearth, safe for the first time in days. Ellis stirred a pot of soup, his movements quiet, careful. Vetra sat nearby, her arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes distant. She had barely spoken since the night before. "You should eat something," Ella said, handing her a bowl. She took it with both hands, her fingers still trembling slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, not meeting his eyes. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackling between them, Ellis wanted to ask questions: where she came from, how she got here, what happened, but he waited. He had learned that sometimes silence could open more doors than words. After a few slow sips of soup, Vetra finally spoke. "My ship wasn't meant to come here," she said quietly. "It was a refugee carrier." Ellis looked up, listening. "We were promised a safe place, a planet where no one would hurt us," she continued, voice low. "But it was a lie." Her hands gripped the bowl tighter. "Pirates attacked us," she said. "They didn't want the ship. They wanted the people." Ellis's jaw tightened. "I escaped in one of the pods," she went on, "with my children. And my mate." She paused, the next word sticking in her throat. "He died before we landed." She said, looking away. There wasn't enough oxygen for all of us. A long silence filled the room. Ellis didn't say anything, didn't interrupt. He just listened. "I buried him in the forest," Vetra added, "near the ridge where the rocks are red." She stared into the fire now, her voice thin like paper. "I tried to find help," she said. "I went to the towns, the roads. I begged." Her eyes filled with pain, not the kind that screamed, but the kind that had gone quiet from too much use. "They saw what I was," she said. "They spat." Some laughed. Others said I should sell my children if I wanted food. Ellis's fists clenched. "Monsters," he muttered. Vetra nodded slowly. "I came back to the pod with nothing." She said, "I told my children stories to keep them calm. Lied about food coming soon. Lied about their father coming back." She lowered the empty bowl to the floor. "When I found your garden," she said, "I thought maybe I could take just enough to keep them alive one more night." She looked at him finally, her expression filled with shame. "I didn't want to steal," she said, "but I didn't want to bury another child either." Ellis stood and walked over, kneeling near her. "You don't need to be ashamed," he said softly. "You were trying to keep your family alive, but—" "I brought trouble to your door," she replied. "They'll find out, won't they? The ones who watch, the patrols." Ellis nodded slowly. "They might," he said, "but I won't tell them." "Why?" she asked, eyes narrowing in disbelief. "Because I've seen your heart," Ellis answered, "and I've seen theirs, the ones who turned you away." Vetra looked at him like she was trying to believe something impossible. "No one has ever helped me without asking for something back," she said. Ellis reached toward the small carved stone on the table, the one she had left near the tree line. "You already gave me something," he said, holding it up. "This," he continued. "It told me who you are more than words ever could." She stared at the stone, eyes glistening. "It's a symbol from my people," she whispered. "It means shelter, or safe ground." Ellis placed the stone gently back on the table. "Well," he said, "now this place is your shelter too." Vetra turned away, but not before Ellis saw the tears slipping down her cheeks. Silent, private tears of relief, of grief, of something long buried finally breaking open that night. As the children slept peacefully and Vetra lay beside them, Ellis sat at the table with a pencil and a map of the valley. He circled his homestead, then drew a wide ring around it. "Safe ground," he wrote. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring: watchers, patrols, questions, but one thing was now clear. He would protect this family, not out of duty, but because it was right. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel so alone. The threat from town. The sun returned 2 days later, warm and golden. The ground slowly dried, and the forest smelled of damp earth and life. Inside Ellis's cabin, the children laughed for the first time. They played with wooden blocks near the fire while Vetra prepared soup using human ingredients. She didn't say much, but Ellis noticed the change in her movements, no longer frantic. Just tired, but there was peace in her eyes, even if only for now. Ellis stood on his porch, arms crossed, staring down the long road that led to the nearest town. It was a quiet morning until he heard the sound of wheels on gravel. A patrol cart, small, boxy, with the town's emblem painted on the side. Two men sat inside, both wearing the pale gray coats of the Colonial Watch. Ellis's jaw tightened. The cart stopped outside his fence. One of the officers, a broad man named Denwick, stepped out and tipped his hat lazily. "Morning, Ellis," he said. "Mind if we have a word?" Ellis forced a smile. "Sure," he said. "What brings you this far out?" Denwick glanced toward the garden, then back at Ellis. "Couple reports from town," he said. "Seems some folks spotted alien tracks around the valley after that storm." Ellis stayed quiet. The second officer, younger and thinner, stepped out of the cart and looked toward the tree line. "We're just making rounds," Denwick continued. "Checking if anything's been disturbed. Nothing unusual here," Ellis said. "Just rain, mud, and hungry crows." Denwick chuckled, but there was no humor in his eyes. "You always did keep to yourself," he said. "But just in case, if you see anything strange, anything alien, you'll report it, right?" Ellis nodded slowly. "Of course," he said. Just like always, Denwick stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen," he said. "This isn't just about safety. You know how things are." He leaned in. "If you're caught hiding something or someone, you'll lose everything." Ellis didn't flinch. "Understood," he said, firm and steady. The younger officer kicked at a loose stone and muttered, "They never survive long out here anyway." Ellis's hands clenched behind his back, but he kept his face calm. "Thanks for checking in," he said. "I'll let you know if I see anything." The two men returned to their cart and drove off slowly, glancing back once before turning down the road. As soon as they were gone, Ellis went inside. Vetra was already standing near the window, her face pale. "You heard?" he asked. She nodded, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "They'll come back," she said. "And next time, they won't ask first." Ellis stepped closer. "They didn't see anything," he said, "and I gave them nothing." "But they're looking," she whispered. "And the moment they know, they'll take my children." He had no answer to that. They both knew it was true. Later that night, Ellis sat with a pad and pencil, staring at a blank page. Vetra stood beside him, quiet but present. "If you want us gone," she said softly, "say it now." Ellis looked up at her. "I didn't save your family just to throw you back into the woods," he said, "but we have to be smart now." They've worked out a plan during the day. The children would stay inside, curtains drawn. Vetra would wear a hooded coat if she needed to move around. Ellis would go into town alone if supplies were needed. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That night, as the children slept and the fire burned low, Ellis walked outside and stared up at the stars. He had come to this world for quiet, for escape. But now he was part of something larger, something worth protecting, even if it meant risk. A sound behind him made him turn. Vetra stood in the doorway, her face lit by the firelight behind her. "I've been hunted before," she said, "but no one has ever stood in front of me." "Not like you." Ellis gave a small nod. "I'm not much of a hero," he said, "but I know what's right." Vetra stepped forward. "Then let me help. Protect your home too," she said. "This is our fight now." And in that moment, under the stars, two worlds stood together, not as human and alien, not as savior and saved, but as something stronger, as allies, as guardians of one fragile, precious hope. A stand for dignity. 3 days passed since the patrol visited every morning. Ellis checked the road from his porch, waiting for the gray cart to return. It didn't, but tension hung in the air like a blade. Inside the cabin, Vetra kept her Promise, she cleaned, cooked, and helped repair the broken tools in the shed. Her hands were skilled, fast, and patient. The children no longer trembled when the floor creaked. They laughed, whispered, and played in quiet corners of the home. But peace was a fragile thing, and Ellis knew it. He had lived too long on the edge of law and land to believe safety lasted without a price. That afternoon, while repairing the fence, Ellis saw something in the distance. A small drone hovered above the trees, silent, watching. It blinked red once before disappearing into the clouds. He went inside immediately. "They know," he said, breath tight. "They're watching us now." Vetra didn't ask how he knew. She could feel it too. Her instincts had kept her alive this long. Now they screamed danger louder than ever. "I should leave," she said, standing up. "Before they take this place from you." Ellis stepped in front of the door. "No," he said. "That's what they want to. Make you feel like a problem to be thrown out." "I'm a problem," she said. "My very presence risks your life. You're not a problem," he said, voice firm. "You're a mother, a survivor, and this is your home now." She stared at him, blinking slowly. "No one's ever said that to me," she whispered. Ellis turned to the fire and tossed in more wood. "We don't have to run," he said. "Not this time." That night, he opened an old metal box from under his floor. Inside were papers, ID tags, and a dusty, handheld recorder. He hadn't used it in years, not since he left Earth, but now it had a purpose again. He set the recorder on the table and looked at Vetra. "I want to tell your story," he said. "Your real one, not the version they'll twist." Vetra looked uncertain. "My story is shameful," she said. "No one wants to hear about a mother who failed to protect her children." "You didn't fail," Ellis said. "You kept them alive when no one else would help." "That's not failure. That's strength." She hesitated, then nodded. For the next hour, she spoke into the recorder softly. Slowly, she told of the refugee ship, of her mate's death, of the forest burial, of the towns that spat in her face. She described feeding her children crushed roots and cold water. She described Ellis, the human who gave without asking. When she finished, her voice broke. "But even now," she said, "I feel like I don't belong anywhere." Ellis turned off the recorder. "You belong here," he said, "and I'm going to prove it." Then, next day, he rode his old hoverbike into town. He carried the recorder, a photo of the children, and a small box of vegetables Vetra had helped grow. He didn't go to the patrol station. He went to the council hall, where the local leaders met. The same men who made laws but never touched the soil. He walked into their office and placed everything on the table. "I have a story you need to hear," he said. They laughed at first, annoyed by the dirt on his boots and the serious look on his face. But he pressed play, and slowly their smiles faded. They listened, word by word, as Vetra's voice filled the room, not angry, not hateful, just tired, honest, and true. By the end, there was silence. No one looked him in the eye. "She's still illegal," one man said weakly. "She's still a person," Ellis replied. "And if you throw her out, they'll be throwing out everything this colony is supposed to stand for." They didn't answer him, but he didn't wait. He walked out of that hall with his head high, the recorder still playing, and, as he left, he noticed people listening, not just the council, but workers, shopkeepers, farmers, real people. They heard her story, and something began to shift. When Ellis returned home, he found Vetra standing at the door. The children were behind her, their eyes wide with fear. "What happened?" she asked. "I told them," he said simply, "and I'd do it again." Her mouth parted, unsure if she should smile or cry. In the end, she did both. "You didn't have to," she said. "Yes," Ellis replied, "I did." And in that moment, something unbreakable formed between them. Not just survival, not just safety, but dignity. A shared truth. No matter what came next, they would face it together. From thief to sister of Earthward spread faster than Ellis expected. Within a week, everyone in town had heard the story of the alien mother. Some whispered behind closed doors, some argued in public, but more surprising than the noise was the silence of the patrols. They didn't return. No more drones circled the skies. No more threats at the gate. Something had changed. At the edge of the town square, a small crowd gathered on the council's request. Ellis stood near the platform, and beside him, Vetra. Wrapped in a long cloak with her hood down for the first time. Her children stayed close, holding her hands, nervous but curious. The council speaker cleared his throat. "We are here to discuss the situation concerning an unauthorized refugee." He began. A few people muttered. Others stared at the alien woman in silence. She stood tall, even as judgment sat heavy in the air. Ellis stepped forward, holding the recorder in his hand again. He didn't speak with anger. He simply replayed Vetra's voice, one final time. "I don't want special treatment," the recording said. "I just want my children to grow without fear. To help grow food, fix machines, build something better like any mother would want." The words echoed through the square. When the recording ended, no one spoke, not for a long while. Then a young woman in the crowd raised her hand. "She fixed my weather vane last night." She said, "It hasn't worked in months," a farmer added. "She helped me lift irrigation pipes." No one even asked her to. Then an old man near the front said simply, "If you send her away, you send away decency too." The council looked uneasy. This wasn't going how they had planned. Ellis spoke one last time. "You call her a thief," he said. But all she took was what no one else would give: kindness, food, a little hope. He turned to Vetra. "She didn't steal from us," he continued. "She reminded us who we were supposed to be." There was silence again, but this time, it felt different, like the ground was shifting. After a long pause, the council made their decision. Vetra and her children are granted permission to remain. They said they will be offered a work permit and treated as temporary citizens. While further discussion is made, it wasn't full recognition, but it was enough, more than enough. Vetra's knees buckled slightly, and Ellis caught her before she fell. She wasn't weak, just overwhelmed. She had fought too long, survived too much. Now, finally, she could breathe. That evening, the sky turned orange and gold as Ellis and Vetra returned home. The children played near the garden, now blooming with life again. Birds sang from the treetops, and the wind didn't feel sharp anymore, it felt free. Ellis worked beside Vetra. In the garden, planting new seeds, they moved in rhythm, wordless but together. At one point, she paused and looked at him. "You risked everything for me." She said, "I risked everything," Ellis replied. "Because you were worth it." She smiled. And it was the first time it reached her eyes. "I used to think survival was the goal," she said. "But now I understand it's not enough to survive. You have to belong." Ellis nodded slowly, wiping dirt from his hands. "You do belong," he said. "Here, with us." Later that night, as stars returned to the sky, Vetra carved something into a flat stone with a small blade. She handed it to Ellis without a word. He turned it over. The same leaf symbol, but with a new mark added beside it. He looked at her, confused. "In my culture," she said, "that means sister, or bond beyond blood." Ellis held the stone tightly in his hand. "Then, I guess we're family now," he said. Vetra nodded. "No," she replied. "We always were, we just didn't know it yet." And under the stars of a world far from Earth, a man and an alien mother stood side by side, no longer strangers, no longer outcasts, but as equals, as builders of something new, from thief to sister, from fugitive to friend. Her journey was no longer one of hiding. It was a path of belonging, rooted now in the soil of Earth and the kindness of one human heart.